Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Today I want to introduce someone special, Alexander, who is somebody who reached out to me on Facebook, and he is a blind anime fan, which is kind of an interesting perspective that I thought we could all learn a bit from. So he was kind enough to want to engage in a fairly lengthy interview, and I decided not to cut it in any particular way, so I hope you enjoy this as much as I think it's pretty cool.
So first of all, let me just say this is just wow, because when I originally reached out to you, I was not expecting a response. I kind of did it as a whim thing to say, let's see how this goes. And here you responded right away, and I was like, gee, this guy. And because I'd come across your recommendations because there's another guy. It sounds like it says Chaya IV on Facebook. He's a black guy who does stuff on Fate as well. Mm-hmm. And I think you were in his recommendations, and I came across one of your lore videos. And so I started watching that, and so I started listening to you. And I also like the fact that you defend anime culture. And it's also because of you that I pronounce anime correctly now. Because prior to that, I was pronouncing it like a freaking American, which I'm not. I'm Northern Native American, Lakota, and Southern Native American, Cuban, Mexican. So I am by no means American, but and so to kind of explain a bit of me, lost my vision by the time I was 14. The first anime I ever saw was Dragon Ball Z, although I did not understand that it was anime at the time. And in fact, I have a very distinct memory of watching a scene where Gohan was looking over his textbooks, and there were kanji there. And I go, why is that in Japanese? But he's speaking English. It didn't make sense in my head. Yeah. So later I found out, okay, so it's because my friend had gotten the Tree of Might movie when Turles makes his appearance, and he'd gotten a sub of that. So I have actually had the experience of watching a sub before. And so there was that. And then so I knew it was Japanese. And then I started watching the very first anime that I watched consciously knowing it was anime was Sailor Moon. I was about 9 or so on the old Toonami block that came on in the afternoon. And so Sailor Moon, DBZ, the original Gundam Wing. And then at night, I would always, before Gundam Wing would come on, I would always turn there at the very end, and I would hear this voice giving a summary of a show that was going on. I did not know that what I was hearing was Al Elric from Full Metal. And his voice drew me in. I was like, who is this? I want to know what this is. So several years later, my girlfriend at the time, she was having a little get-together, and a bunch of us were there, and we started watching Full Metal, the first adaptation, not Brotherhood. And I finally was like, wow, and it sucked me in right away. Full Metal is one of my the original even though I know that half of it's not canon, the original adaptation does still have a special place in my heart, as does Sailor Moon, because of that. And the really awesome thing was from Sailor Moon and that I discovered Yu Yu Hakusho. I discovered Trigun, of course, Vash the Stampede being who he was. And then there was a man who did. I'm a big fan of nerdcore rap, which is pretty much all I listen to almost exclusively now, on the rap side of things. And this guy by the name of 6 Seconds, he did a Dead Man Wonderland rap from the perspective of Ganta Igarashi, and he explained the entire thing. And then, so I started watching it, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And that's now one of my all-time favorite anime. And then I had experienced something similar when someone had done a rap from the perspective of Gasai.
Wow.
At the time, I didn't know was, well, the quintessential yandere, but um, I threw it in my thing. I thought it was the name of an anime, because usually when they would do raps, they would title them the name of whatever the anime was. Well, that wasn't the case this time. She was rapping from Yuno's perspective. She also did a rap from Toga's perspective from Boku no Hero.
Ah.
And then I actually got to hear Toga on screen, and Toga's delightfully crazy. I then started watching after she did her rap. Nailed the character perfectly, I might add. Her name is Savi Hyuga. Shout out to her. Please, if this makes it to YouTube, please check out her stuff, because I will say this: I'm a strong proponent of blurs, i.e. black nerds, and indigenous nerds, i.e. indigenous nerds, because we are few and far between, it seems, in the anime community. So I'm always endorsing that. And she's just a genuinely good artist anyway. But so from there, I actually literally watched Future Diary all in one day.
Yep.
Binged it straight through. Found out how much Yuki Taro just pisses me off, and I'd like to curb stomp him. Because I'll go into that later. But I'm going to stop being a giant rambling mess. And do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, absolutely. First, would you like to just introduce yourself in general for the audience?
Okay, so I'm going to do this two ways. I'm going to do it in English, and then I'm going to do it in my native language, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
My name is Alexander Wounded-Side. I come from the Oglala Lakota people from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, Porcupine District. I am a Native American man with Cuban and Southern indigenous roots. I'll say that because it's kind of a hodgepodge on that side. I am bilingual. I identify myself as a proud indigenous nerd. That is a fusion of indigenous nerd, being a part of the anime community and being active in nerd culture is an integral part of my life, always has been. I am a strong proponent of nerd culture, because I feel like if everything else can have a culture, so can we. I totally am in support of waifu for lifeu, because I feel like we people need to stop imposing Western American standards on Japanese culture. You're watching something from another culture. Therefore, their standards are not the same as yours. Period.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. It's not. So, you all, there is a lot. Are you still there?
Absolutely.
There is a lot that people don't want to take into consideration on that. But, so, on the other side, how mitakoyapi na kolapila o otra opia machiapila na washichipiki Alexander Wounded-Side machiapi na ha wopazo ota washtewalake na Deadman Wonderland na Full Metal Alchemist na Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood na Yu Yu Hakusho na Sailor Moon na Dragon Ball Z kena yuha ata washtewalake cha ampetu iohila wopazo ota anagopta Monkey Ash Watohashna Wopazo wa Anagopta Monkey Chashna Ishtama Ruricha Dagani Wamblaka Waki Shnicha Watohashna Chant Awa Ash Lena anime piki ata te wahila. Oh, I'm done.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. All right. So one of the questions I had was, what are probably the few characters from anime that you've actually been able to see?
Uh, okay. Before I answer this,
Hmm.
I will reiterate the only sub I've ever watched when I could see was a Dragon Ball Z movie. So, guys, please do me a favor and don't drag me in the comment section because I'm using dub names. I understand. I find the whole changing names thing annoying too, but I'm just clarifying. So, Goku, Vegeta, basically the entire Dragon Ball Z cast,
Mm-hmm.
the entire Sailor Moon cast, the entire Gundam Wing cast. Uh, do I have to put Pokemon on this list?
If you'd like. I mean, I like
I
Pokemon to an extent.
I almost don't want to, but the entire Pokemon, the original cast. Let's see what else. I think that's a good chunk actually of everybody.
Hmm. Okay, so yeah, like kind of like me, we were watching anime before we knew what that was. Certainly with me and like My Neighbor Totoro and Sailor Moon, I didn't realize what that was until a friend was like, "Hey, do you want to come and watch like anime?" And I'm like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, this stuff." So the question I have for you then is, what attracted you to it, whether you knew what anime was or not?
Literally, so when I was a kid, I was hugely into like Beetleborgs and uh, Rangers and the TMNT live action stuff. I was a typical, you know, I was a typical shonen kid in that way. So then I flipped over to Cartoon Network to see what was on, and I saw this girl with this incredibly blonde hair just going about her day, and I thought, huh, what's this? Then a talking cat pops up out of the blue. And I was like, hmm. So then the next day and then I saw other stuff like, so then the next day, by this point I had actually known what anime was. I knew it was anime. So let's actually drop back to DBZ because that's the first thing that I saw. I saw literally my first image of DBZ was this dude with a tail, with this tall muscular dude in armor with a monkey tail wrapped around his waist. I was like, wow, that looks really cool. Let's see what else happens. And then the whole issue with Raditz and Goku and the whole Piccolo. Like I was really drawn in by the physical, like the Saiyan armor, the Scouters, Piccolo's turban and his shoulder pads and his the mantle he wore, like all of those things. And then I just kept watching it and just started seeing all this really cool stuff. I will say, for a 9-year-old kid, DBZ is awesome to be your entry because you get all this action stuff. It's not too complex a plot point, so you're not trying to figure out who's more powerful, Madara or KCM 5x34 Nine-Tail Fox Naruto. So, or if Light was actually writing what he did. But that drew me in was the characters, because I'd never seen anything like that, and just seeing how they looked, and then the storyline, of course. Seeing Gohan transform into an Izeru for the first time. Seeing Vegeta use his Gallic gun to blow up an entire planet. Those sorts of things just drew me more and more into it.
Absolutely. Okay, so part of that was indeed the visual style in that. And I think for a lot of people, visual style in anime is one of the things that attracts them to this medium more than a lot of other things. With that no longer, I guess, the case, what is it that makes anime special to you?
Okay, so I'll use Deadman, which is probably one of my absolute favorites. Now I focus more on storyline. Now I focus more on plot intricacy. Now I focus more on character development. Um, I'll use I'll use Ganta and Shiro's relationship. Um, Shiro, who is now and will forever be best girl. Um, she the whole spoilers if you haven't watched Dead Man Wonderland. Um, by the way, if you haven't, go do that. Shiro's whole thing is she's this innocent, childlike character who always will defend Ganta and didn't even hold Ganta's mother responsible truly for what she did to her. And then you have Ganta, who's this 14-year-old kid. Like, one of people's biggest complaints is, oh, he's whiny. But see, he was like that even before. That's a part of his character, and he overcomes that pretty quickly, from when he first goes through the dog race to his fight with Nanatsuki Hummingbird. You know, he to me, his character just really hit me. Jumping to another real quick, Kurapika, Hunter x Hunter, you know, he had so much depth. Everything from his quest to avenge his clan to even his abilities were tailored to defending his clan. I feel like they executed that far better than a certain magical eyeball having ninja that I could mention. And, you know, jumping into Naruto for a second, Pain's motivations for why he wanted to do what he did, Madara's motivation. I just love the depth now and the culture, the fact that it's so steeped in Japanese culture, it's so steeped in their lore and all these things. And like with Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball, the references to Journey to the West, and even in Yu Hakusho, the same thing. Just it's so rich and so dense and so much. There's just so much there. There's just absolutely so much there. It's so rich. It's so dense. It's so just immense, I guess.
Yeah, and you definitely think that type of storytelling is something that is unique to the medium.
Yes, and also that, well, anime. When the average American thinks anime, they think shonen, specifically battle shonen. But then there's Prince of Tennis. Then there's Hikaru no Go. Then there's, like, I can't even think of the name, but it was a Christmas anime that I watched. There's, Black Butler. There's just so many different things.
Yeah, shonen's the tip of the iceberg. There's something for everybody, really.
Right. That's exactly it, you know, I will also say that one thing is I love well-developed characters. What I don't like is Deus Ex Machina, which is why I'm not a big Black Clover fan, because there used to be something called Manga Storian out there, which was they were reading manga in a dramatic way on YouTube. So I read like the first 60 some odd chapters of Berserk like that. And I read Black Clover and promptly didn't finish Black Clover because it did something I can't stand, which is the main character's whole thing is I want to be, a wizard king, I think. And then he goes there and he doesn't have powers, but miraculously, like literally out of freaking nowhere, this grimoire appears and he has anti-magic, and it's the fact that he doesn't have magic. And I was like, okay, so he has Deus Ex Machina. Wow. All right. But not every. I mean, it's a medium, so not everything's going to be perfect, and I understand that.
Okay. Have you ever been to Japan or experienced Japanese culture?
Uh, I have not. Although if I were going to go to the Japan, I would want to talk to the traditional Shinto people. I would want to go into the countryside and talk to the traditional people who still live a traditional life. Because in that instant, I would not actually be an anime fan going there. I would be a Lakota person going to see cultural comparisons and that sort of thing, which I find extremely interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me see
Um,
here. What is it like to experience an anime audibly? What parts stand out? What things do you use to say
um,
like, oh, this is good versus oh, this is crap?
sounds, consistency. Going back to Wonderland, when you hear, like, when Ganta's about to use his branch of sin, there's a very distinct sound. Once I determine what sound quality is, and I know I can follow it, I can focus on the plot. That being said, that's why I have a visceral disdain for Sword Art Online, because they had really good narration. Like, in on the show, there was a lot of narration. He narrated what he was doing. It was really awesome stuff. And then they'd do this thing where he'd be like, I have to go up this treacherous mountain to get this insert item here. And then the next scene, he's coming back with the item. You don't see him go up the mountain. You don't see him get to fight whatever the item the keeper is or whatever. It's just, oh, I said I'd do it. Now I'm back. Here you go. And that particularly bothered me, as it's one of the few anime that I can enjoy, uh, pretty well. And it does that, you know, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. And along with that same idea, specifically with fight scenes, you mentioned iconic sounds, so sounds that you recognize as being indicative of a certain move or attack or something like that. Um,
Yes.
what, I guess, anything else about fights that stand out? Is there, what other aspects from the audio perspective do you judge?
Music, build-ups, uh, it not taking 60 episodes for someone to ascend to the next level.
Mm.
You
So
know,
when okay, yeah, a lot of times, especially with shonen and even things like Initial D, which is technically the same thing but just with street racing, there'll be like characters on the sidelines who will essentially comment constantly on what is happening in the foreground. Do you find that stuff helpful?
oh God, yes, and yes. Really good example. Yu Yu Hakusho, when they were fighting the four beasts, I forget their formal title at the moment. When Kuwabara was running from his opponent, and Hiei goes, "Do you think he's gonna realize it's a circle?" You know, and Koenma, of course, giving rundowns of what's happening, and when a really cool thing is when Yusuke was fighting in the darkness, and he put the cigarette in the guy's belt so that he could aim his spirit gun. And he explained that. He's like, "How did you hit me?" Oh, well. And then when he bounces his spirit gun off of the mirror of Forlorn Hope, like, really cool things like that are really helpful, and they're just really ingenious too. Like, I like getting the experience of being able to be like, wow, he's intelligent. Uh, the iconic sound of, like, a really iconic scene for me. So yes, visually, Goku going Super Saiyan is still an iconic scene for me because I got to see that. But for the me of now, Rock Lee dropping his weights is an iconic scene.
Mm.
You know. Oh, another really good example. Yamcha's Wolfang fists in Dragon Ball. Whenever he would declare his attack, you could hear the rapid strike of his fist, and you would actually hear a wolf howling in the background. And that added an extra level of atmosphere to what was going on as well.
That's awesome. Let me see here. Have you seen much of Fairy Tale?
No, and I'm gonna be honest as to why. I have this weird thing about medieval settings. I don't know why, because I used to love high fantasy when I was a kid. Like I read Lord of the Rings, I read all these other series, but I don't know, like I'm having, and that's actually my issue with Demon Slayer. By the way, Demon Slayer, definitely really good narration, but I'm having a problem with it because it's set in, like, I find the plot interesting, but because of the time period, it's a bit of an issue. And what's really weird is, you know, but I like a lot of the intricacies of it. On the flip side, you've got Tokyo Ghoul, which I really like, actually, and that again has really good narration.
Okay, yeah. The reason I brought up Fairy Tail anyway was that, in my opinion, after trying desperately to look through the entire series to find a decent fight scene, I couldn't. In from a visual perspective anyway, because a lot of times it would be like a 3-shot structure. The character would like wind up for a strike, then it would cut to like kind of like a generic sword slash effect, and then cut back to them having already swung. So there wasn't any actual like movement or choreography to it. But for all I know, the audio could have been fantastic. And so I'm wondering, yeah, I guess if they're... Oh, go ahead.
You're literally... So, and that is exactly why I can't watch Sword Art. Now think about that same thing happening, but imagine he says he's going to do this thing, then there's no sound at all, nothing, and then the next scene you get, literally the next scene is him saying, here's the whatever it is. So you can imagine how nerve-wracking and just annoying that is. Like, I'd like to see him do this thing, whatever the big treacherous thing is.
Yeah. So for all you know, there could be a lot of cues or visuals and things that maybe are telling the story, or maybe it has amazing animation but terrible sound, and so that would affect your perception of it.
Exactly. You know, and it's really sometimes hard, and I stepped away from anime for a while because of it. You know, because I just wish that I could have a larger selection of things. Death Note is actually really good about narration as well. That, and I just love the story that's being told. May I ask you a question actually pertaining to Death Note?
Sure.
So, you're familiar, obviously, you know, the whole light versus L, you know. My belief, I have two theories. One is, while the story's about light, people say he's not the protagonist, but I think it's all subjective. It's either you have a choice. Also, I believe that light and L is a battle of, it's a battle of gods, because light, the light of the world, L is the actual Hebrew word meaning God, prevalent in the word Elohim, gods of the sky.
That's impressive. I have no idea if the creators did that intentionally. I would like to assume they did, the mangaka. But I mean, they definitely play it out like that, I would say. It's not just a battle of two individuals. It's like a battle of philosophies, which in some ways can... A lot of ancient philosophy goes back to issues of theology, so that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Also, I kind of look at Toga and Kaneki's relationship as well, from Tokyo Ghoul. Is Toga a tsundere, basically? Because I kind of get very tsundere vibes from her.
I apologize, I'm not actually as familiar with that particular setup.
As in the term or the show?
The show.
Ah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I understand that completely. And then, did you ever watch Dead Man Wonderland? / read it?
I have not. I know bits and pieces about it.
I definitely think you should. Your channel actually encouraged me to start watching Fate. And actually, I have a couple of Fate-related questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
So, when they summon a servant, and, you know, they're not a 14-year-old girl who... I'm sorry. I'm thinking back to that scene when her servant basically kind of tells her off, and he's like, "You're really going to base a command seal on something as insignificant as that?" And you know, it's just you wanted a good example of how I take enjoyment. All right, that's a really good scene. She summons him. He gets all mouthy. She's like, "I demand that you obey me." He's like, "You're really going to waste the command seal on that? Don't you realize you only have an..." As is typical of someone her age, she tries to kind of be like, "Well, yeah, I know, and of course I understand how this works." If that makes any sense. And like, to me, I love scenes like that, scenes that encapsulate something like, wow, that is exactly how a impetuous 14, 15-year-old would try to make themselves bigger. Or another really good example, to go back to Wonderland for a second, when Ganta goes into Wonderland, Shiro is singing, and then she stops, and Shiro's really playful, really like childlike, but she stops. You kind of hear like wind for a second, and it gets really, and the buildup is really kind of somber, and she goes, "He's here," in just this really heavy, solemn tone, and that's so not like Shiro that the impact of that hits right away.
Nice. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
So those are examples of things that really resonate. Emotion, music, all of it.
Okay, here's a fun one. You told me you like fan service. How does that work?
Well, people's voices are very, very, very descriptive of them. You can tell a lot by someone. So, Gasai is in the pool. It's very clear that her top flies away, or her top slides away, and she's hiding. And she's like, "No, you have to stand in front of me, or people are going to see." And Yuki's like, "But I..." So you can visualize that. It's there's a lot of visual, a lot of audio kind of gives you an idea of what's going on there.
Yeah, so when you say visualize in that sense, are you kind of referring back to things that you do recall having seen and
yes,
picturing that? Okay, yeah. So perhaps if you were blind from the get-go, maybe your perception of it could be completely different.
That's very possible.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was just kind of curious. Is like, well, certainly the voices in itself can absolutely. So it's painting a picture.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You see here. Can you point out a specific situation where there's something even though it is audiovisual, where you literally just could not follow what was going on because of the way it was shown? A lot of times, I guess, kind of masterful, presumed, like film and whatnot, goes by that idea of show, don't tell. And so they they officially try to tell the story through visual cues so that they can free up the audio to do other things. So you have an example like that?
So there's an anime called, I think it's called like Freeze.
Yes, I've heard of that one.
And I watched the first episode. The music, like the sounds, were very indicative of like sci-fi and like kind of a Gundam-esque sound, and the music sounded really cool. So it sounded really pleasing, but for the first like 4 minutes, I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I just said, "Oh, great, I can't watch it." So I just kind of clicked off of it. Well, I got to a point where they were talking, but again, I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I just didn't even try from that point because,
Yeah.
So there's stuff like, there are things like that are oftentimes an issue. Like when you'll see, like where they'll pan, where you might see, for instance, something. All right, I'll give you a really good example using DBZ. When Cell stands on that hill and like destroys the freaking army that's coming toward him, you don't hear anything. You hear explosions, but you don't know what's happening. Actually, I recently had that issue in Darwin's game. Something happened, and I couldn't follow what was going on. Although I am watching Darwin's game, I'll be glad when the 5th episode comes up. And Darwin's Game also really good with the description.
Hmm. So was that do you know if that was like the big premiere episode, perhaps, that gap was there?
No, it wasn't. It was not.
Oh.
I think it was like the second or third one. A really good example. All right. Darwin's Game is freaking crap. Do I need to give another spoiler alert warning because I'm about to go into some stuff that happened?
We'll just spoiler warning for this little section, I suppose.
Okay, so there's a fight when the main character is fighting someone, and as he's using his, and I'm deliberately speaking in vague terms, as he's using his weapon, and the opponent is using his weapon or his powers to defend against it, he's actively commenting, but he does it in a very organic way. So, like, Darwin's Game was really, really good with that. I mean, extremely good about narration, and I hope they keep it up because it was phenomenal.
Gotcha. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, obviously, anime doesn't just relate to TV shows and animation, but a plethora of different works, from books to video games. What other ways have you experienced the fandom?
So the what ifs that are prevalent now. Like they're basically like audio fan fiction. You know?
Uh-huh.
A lot of Naruto, for instance. I saw a really interesting crossover where basically Naruto had the Berserker armor and Sasuke had the Behelit. I don't think he had the Egg of the King, but he had a Behelit.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
That's a big thing.
So they went ahead and dubbed an audio drama?
It wasn't an audio drama. It was like they were kind of telling a story.
Oh, okay.
It was a fan-made thing. Kind of like that kind of like this. I saw a fan dub of season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is actually pretty cool. Also through nerdcore music, a lot of artists do music through the perspective from character perspectives. They tell the story of the characters, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another way that I definitely enjoy the fandom, and you can learn very interesting things that way. Even if, like for instance, the battle between between Yuki and Ganta, and then Ace Man and Shiro jumps in on Ganta's side. It was a hip hop battle, and Yuno, of course, jumps in on Yuki's side, and it's interesting because they actually do it extremely well. The women's voices were actually on point. They did them extremely well. Like you literally got the feeling that Yuno and Shiro were rapping.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
The Ganta voice was a bit off. He sounded like Weevil Underwood from Yu-Gi-Oh! So
let me see here. Okay, so yeah, you said you used to watch listen to manga being read by people, specifically Berserk. How did they do that? Were they describing the images as well as the dialogue?
They were describing, again, it was a dramatized version. So they might say, and Guts makes a mighty swing, lopping off the head with like that. The only problem with that is the guy reading it, he said everything dramatically. Like he didn't. I mean, I loved Manga Story, and there's also a subsequent title, Comic Story, and check them out. They're really cool. But that was just one thing, and then they ended up getting taken down for copyright issues, I guess. Like, and everything. The only things they regularly did were Berserk, and then they did Attack on Titan. Tried to read Attack on Titan. Couldn't get past the first chapter of Attack on Titan, or maybe like the first 3, I think. They got to where Eren got detained, and when they, that whole thing, and I was like,
I wonder if
really?
that's
Like,
because
you're
they were
gonna
actually showing the manga. Because like I wonder if it was just like literally on a black screen, like a podcast style, if they could get away with that. Because I think that
I
is
think
a pretty awesome
they
way to
were
experience something.
they were showing pictures, so I think that was a big issue.
Hmm.
There were some other manga I wish that they'd actually uh, done. Unfortunately, that's also their presentation, though, sort of turned me off a certain manga like Kill La Kill and Tokyo Ghoul. Actually, I
Hmm.
prefer the anime of Tokyo Ghoul because of the way it was.
What was that about Kill la Kill? Sorry.
I just didn't really care for it because
Hmm.
magical uniforms just struck me as kind of odd.
Yeah, the whole thing is like extremely fan servicey. I guess this would be Studio Trigger, so they're after Gainax and whatnot. Very much like insane visuals, I guess. So they might not have been caring, not necessarily not caring about the audio as much, but it definitely relies a lot on their visual style, the appeal.
Right. Right, which is, and the plot is like, okay, no. Like at the point when the chick's uniform starts talking to her, I'm like, I'm gonna go watch Assassination Classroom now.
Let me see here. Do you have experience with light novels at all?
I saw someone reading one. It was a Naruto light novel. I would love to read more because that way I don't have to try to follow a plot. I can just read. That would
Hmm.
actually be really, really awesome. There's a lot of light novels. I know there's some Fate light novels that I definitely find interesting. Um, oh, quick Fate question because I was going to ask you this earlier. So
Uh-huh.
when the servant is summoned, so does the master actually do anything short of using command seals? Is it like a teamwork thing in the same vein uh as like kind of the Pokemon sort of thing where they're fighting, or more of like a Digimon type thing where they're fighting together? Or is it just you summon them and there you go kind of thing?
It's more of like a strategy kind of thing. The servants do most of the fighting for sure. Like you can just
Mm-hmm.
literally watch them beat the crap out of each other, and the command seals can obviously boost the potential of a given servant or tell them to pull out. And in some ways, yeah, it's like a bit of a maybe sometimes a clash of personality. Like usually when
Mm-hmm.
Shiro uses command spells or something, it'd be like Saber, don't do that. You're gonna use all your energy and die. And so, but she's still so stubborn. He'll use a command seal to try and save her. That kind of a scenario. Um,
Right.
but yeah, usually, and especially with Shiro, at least in the Fate route, that's the 2006 anime, which is a different plot line. But he really wants to fight, but can't because everyone's like, no, you're. I mean, humans can't fight servants, and even someone like Reen, she's got magecraft. It only goes so far, I guess, and under very specific circumstances could she actually take on a servant. So usually, yeah, no, it's always servant on servant for the most part.
Okay, and then the Grail War, they were originally trying to get to the root, but
Hmm.
that sort of got the Grail War, or getting the Grail was actually supposed to be simply a step in that process, but it became the end unto itself.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. The original purpose was to get back their old magic. When you reach the root, you can get what's called true magic. It's a completely different tier, I suppose, than like what magecraft is, where you're just manipulating elements and doing things like that. You could basically
Right.
cause miracles. And so the Einsburns really wanted that, and so they devised this complex spell, which is the Greater Grail, to try and get that back. But somewhere along the line, they're just like, hey, this lesser grail thing is just a bunch of mana, and we can use that to become really powerful and do crazy stuff. So they cared about that more materially than just the root sometimes.
Okay. So I'm gonna flip one of your questions. back on you. What was the first anime that you watched, knowing what anime was?
I think Cowboy Bebop. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. I don't think I
Yeah.
ever watched it, but yeah.
Yeah, it was like a friend put me on to Adult Swim. And so that was pretty much it. It's like that's the first time it was actually called that. I had been watching things like Sailor Moon. I used to watch when it was early morning. God, I don't remember what channel, but it was like right after Gargoyles, and I'd wake up early just to catch it. That was before
You know
it
what's
went to
interesting?
Cartoon Network.
Gargoyles is very. I mean, it's American, but it can definitely hold its own.
Yeah, a lot of people love
Gar-
it.
so good. I'm not the only dude who was young watching Sailor Moon. I still want to see a actual dub of Sailor Moon that's not freaking nerfed all to hell, where they have to erase the true nature of relationships and that whole thing. I
Oh
think
well,
that's on the.
that's already a thing, thankfully. Viz reacquired the rights and they redubbed the entire thing.
I might actually go and watch that. It's actually funny. I'm probably the only dude in the world who actually liked Tuxedo Mask as a character, but the reason for that is actually visually, because there's a very iconic scene. Because obviously, by this point, we knew who Tuxedo Mask was. We knew he was Darien, and I'm again using dub names.
Yeah.
We knew he was Darien, but it was cool to see he's in this tunnel because Darien used to ride a motorcycle, and you see him riding this motorcycle to come to Sailor Moon's aid. And as he's shooting down the street, you see him transition from Darien, into Tuxedo Mask on the bike. So you see Tuxedo Mask riding this motorcycle down the highway, and that just was like, wow.
Yeah.
That was a really awesome scene to me. You know.
Okay, going real quick back to the whole light novel thing. Yeah, because like you said, Fate does have light novels, particularly Zero and Apocrypha. Would it be something of value to have the entirety of, like the text format for that so that you could run it through like text to speech or something like that? Would that be something that you're interested in, or would you prefer somebody to kind of like the manga, go ahead and dramatize it?
To be honest, I'm a bit gun shy of people dramatizing manga after my first. So I'd have to see how it was done.
Yeah,
a really good. Actually, if you get the time, you should look up these things called graphic audio. That's what they're called, graphic audio. There's a site for them, and their slogan is "A movie in your mind." If you listen to that, you'll see what my ideal situation would be. Because I would love to see more anime available. Because there's a lot of anime that I would definitely love to watch. Did you watch / do you watch Seven Deadly?
I did for a little bit. I started at the beginning.
What about Demon Slayer?
Yep, I've watched that one.
Okay, I was just curious because there's also this. So I have a question for you as a fellow nerd. First, can I ask how old you are?
I am 30.
Okay, we're the exact same age. Okay, good. Then this is actually. So growing up in our generation, we were antagonized, especially me being a nerd of color, and then you. What's your ethnic background, if I can ask?
Probably mostly Caucasian. I've got Polish kind of further down, I guess.
I was just curious, but so. We were in that being antagonized for being into, like, I always like to say there were acceptable things they could be into on a pop level, like Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh! They could be into those things. But when you got into delve deeper into nerd culture, something like Death Note, before that horrible adaptation that took place on Netflix, we were antagonized and ridiculed, and I mean, it got pretty bad for some people. And now those same people suddenly, because the MCU exists in movie form and the aforementioned adaptation of Death Note exists, they like being nerdy has become partially trendy, and
Hmm.
it actually kind of frustrates me because it's like, we went through hell to be this way, to be who we were and to be into our fandoms, and now we have to fight for every that's why, waifu for life exists, because we're having to fight against that perception. And, 4Kids is horrendous dubbing, for instance, of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You know, we,
definitely. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Kind of nerd culture has become popularized, and a lot of, I think, anime fans that were fans of anime way before that are struggling under the idea that now there's a bunch of I don't know, quote unquote normies entering into it, sort of, and expecting anime to be casual like the other things that they used to be into. It's like, well, why can't this appeal to a broader audience, or why is this excluding me? Why can't this material be more risque? And so I guess, at the same time, only time will tell, because it looks like Western fandom in a lot of ways, like comic books and things like that, have really suffered, whereas the Japanese ones are succeeding quite remarkably, because they're still crazy. They'll draw, they'll write whatever they want to without restriction for the most part.
right. And I guess it's really interesting to me because, like, you know, you've got someone might go, "Oh, I watched Boku no Hero," though they won't say Boku no Hero. They'll say My Hero Academia. But Mirai Nikki, for instance, they're not going to touch that, because that gets a bit too dark for them in places. And that's another thing. Like, they will. I notice a lot of the titles they watch are very light. They don't get into things like Mirai Nikki, because that gets pretty dark in places. Same with Dead Man. I mean, there's a massacre in the first 2 episodes of children.
Yeah.
And in Mirai Nikki, there's just everything that happened to and it's just, I don't know. Like, I feel like we deserve. I feel like we have been fans of this. We've been here, and I feel like we have a right to. People will call it, "Oh, you're gatekeeping."
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You wanna call it that? Fan freaking tastic. Well, then call me a member of the Survey Corps if I'm gatekeeping them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it kind of goes both ways too, because in a way you're saying that you're wrong if you like this show for these reasons, which in itself is kind of a form of gatekeeping. It's like the only things that'll fit or should be allowed to propagate are those shows that fit their standards, which is troublesome.
Right. It's like we're not all. It's like, basically it's like, oh yeah, I'm into your stuff now, so I'm gonna completely change everything to have my specifications. So everything that you enjoyed, oh yeah, that scene where Ninatsuki goes completely postal and damn near freaking takes her brother's head off with her branches. And you ever gonna edit that? Oh, by the way, this entire episode is just going to be taken because we can't show that anymore. It's like, first of all, it's corruption of art, and second of all, it's like, no, we fought for this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that's actually kind of interesting, because there are some shows like the Babylonia anime, the Fate one that came out recently, that people were criticizing because of camera angles. It showed a lot of, crotch shots and butt shots and things, probably things that you might not even notice if you were just listening to the dub that they're even doing. And I think a lot of more pervy anime tend to do that too, is like sneak in little shots of like underskirts and things like that, every excuse they can. So it makes me wonder if you can kind of like see the gravity of what people are complaining about sometimes.
I mean, I get it. But at the same time, like, if you watch Tokyo, like Tokyo Ghoul, you watch Tokyo Ghoul Hulu, there's a parental advisory warning there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to put something like Tokyo Ghoul or Dead Man or Future Diary on fucking 432 not for obvious reasons. I mean, so should I take offense because there's graphic live action American cartoon, American programming and that's the thing. There's live action American programming that does the same thing. I think the biggest issue is these people can't conceptualize that, hey, even though it's animation, it's not for children. I think that's the crux of the issue. They can't realize, but it's animation, so it's for kids. No, it isn't.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll switch
Not for
topic.
kids.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you own any figures?
Sadly, no. I used to own some DBZ figures back in the day. I wish I could. If I was in a position where I could, I would definitely collect more figures. There are a few that I would love to have.
Mm-hmm. I guess the reason I bring it up is I'm curious. Like, would you be able to get a better sense of how that character might appear if you were able to feel around a figure, for instance?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely, that would be incredible. That would definitely be significant. That would actually help a lot. And I feel like, seeing things like I never got, when I was younger, I never got to do the, collectibles thing. Like people who have collectibles of different things. Like, oh, I have a replica of, Tanjiro's sword, or, I have, a Nezuko figure where she doesn't have the bamboo rod in her mouth, which, by the way, that's an interesting thing because someone had to tell me about the bamboo rod because I didn't know that. Someone had to tell me about that.
Yeah, I guess they never say like, oh, I did this so she wouldn't keep biting or something.
Right, because I asked a question because I was thinking it's because of her age. It's like, why is she not able to talk to him? And then she explained, well, actually, she has a bamboo rod in her mouth. I was like, oh, well, that explains that.
Yeah, that's one of those things they convey visually, but because they assume you can see, they don't bother explaining in any other form.
Now, I do happen to know that he carries her in a box, and the reason I know that is because, well, his teacher told him, I have this box that's really light that you can carry your sister in. Another really good point is when they go and they get their crow companion, and you hear all the crows cawing, and and then the woman's like, oh, these will be, then she explains their purpose and stuff, But there's a lot of really good narration in Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
And a lot of Asukai have a lot of really good narration. Sword Art Online, not Sword Art Online. I mean, it did have good narration, but anyway, Rise of the Shield Hero had really good narration.
Yeah, are you watching the Crunchyroll dub of that then?
I actually found that originally on YouTube. I watched the first episode to see the first couple episodes to see if I liked it. I have never grown to hate it. I think I have never grown to hate a character in one episode. That only happened on one other occasion, and that was one of that really annoying dove from Tokyo Ghoul, and I was so happy when he finally died. But the female who volunteered to be his ally, and then she brought a false rape allegation against him.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people were really divisive about that. From a political sort of standpoint, people are like, this is a problematic scene because women don't lie about that sort of thing. They have no reason to, and this story is perpetuating the idea.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this straight up. People lie. I could go into some things about my own past, but I'm not going to. But people freaking lie. Actually, no. I will mention this. In 2010, I got arrested because I was rapping, and at an airport, a white man accused me of threatening to blow up a plane. He then
Oh.
quoted lyrics that were completely unrelated to anything I said. That clearly, very, very clearly said that I had done this or that I'd rapped like that.
Mm.
Because of his actions, a flight got canceled. Everyone got their money back, and I went to jail.
That's crazy.
People freaking lie. So I'm sorry. I don't care what it is or who it is. They're capable of lying. And yes, I'm impassioned about this because I've been the victim of people pulling bullshit like that. You know?
Uh-huh.
Just saying. And actually, you know what? I'm actually glad that now that we're looking at it from that perspective, I'm glad that scene's there because it shows that it's a freaking possibility. And guess what? Just like everyone else is saying it's a problematic scene, you know what? You guys are the kinds of people who would have treated him exactly how he was treated in the situation at hand. You
Yep.
proved that scene true. Just saying.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad we were able to bring that particular topic up. Let's see here. Are there any shows that you've wanted to watch but can't because they haven't been dubbed? It's sort of a localization issue.
Let me think. Before I saw the manga Kill La Kill, but afterwards, no, I'm good. Let's see. There are shows I wanted to watch, but I couldn't because there was minimal narration, like the show Freeze I mentioned.
Mm.
I thought about Code Geass, Soul Eater. The one that you mentioned about something D you mentioned earlier about speed racing.
Oh, Initial D, yes.
That actually sounds interesting, and that's only because I was a Speed Racer fan when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
Initial
that's
D
just-
is filled with narration, pretty much the entire thing, because they'll cut to, you know, obviously they'll be racing and stuff, but for almost every single thing, the characters are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you just did that," and stuff, and mild, like some people might find that mildly hokey, but in this case is kind of a fantastic tool.
It's actually really, and I always loved anime like that, and you know, Full Metal Alchemist, the original, was like that, and Brotherhood was actually like that. There was actually one thing. Oh, one. So, okay, so let's say hypothetically, let's say you watched an anime and you loved the way a certain character was drawn, and then they changed the way that character was drawn in, say, a reboot or something.
Yeah,
Could
absolutely.
that actually turn you off of watching that anime?
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, Sailor Moon Crystal, which is their more recent adaptation, they're trying to be more accurate to the manga, which I think is fine. I guess the original 90s show that we grew up on took a lot of creative liberties, but at the same time, the art is quite a bit different, and I don't like it. I would always prefer the original to that, and so I just have no interest.
So it's actually funny you mentioned that because like you remember I told you Al's voice. I would always hear Al's voice, and I wanted to know because his voice is just really intriguing. And then I finally watched the show, and his voice really suits his character. And then I watched Brotherhood, and they changed his voice.
Yeah, the reason for that, Aaron Dismuke was the guy who used to
No,
play
I know
him.
why.
Okay,
But
yeah.
it doesn't change the fact that they changed his voice. I was like, fuck. And so I'm over here like, God damn it. So I'm trying to like give myself, and so basically what I've been trying, I'm trying to tell myself, okay, Alex, use that as a positive. Associate this Al with the Brotherhood and the other Al with the original. Just do that in your head, and that kind of works, but I still am like, why can't we have the original voice of Al? Like, I could deal with pretty much like, well, like most other voice changes, but like that just bothered me because there were so many things, you know, that, and like even that, him recapping the show, that had a really special place to me, and they don't do that in in Brotherhood, someone else does it, and it just kind of like those little touches really kind of ruin the show for me, and like what they did to Rock Lee in later episodes with the fucking drunken kung fu thing. I get it; it's a play on the whole. Yeah, I get it, but I don't like that they turned him into a running gag, and it just irked me. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I'm going to kind of combine a bit of two for the sake of time, but they're kind of the same. Who is your favorite character that you haven't seen? And how much of them are you able to describe using the descriptions that you've heard or other things like that?
All right. Favorite character haven't seen. All right. I'm going to split this into categories male and female for obvious reasons.
Sure.
Favorite male character that I have not seen might actually be Kanami from Darwin's Game. I'm actually very curious to know what he actually. Kuwabara. I'm very curious as to know what he looks like. And on the female side of things, Yuno Gasai.
Yeah. Could you try and describe her at all?
When I think of her short, I'll just say well endowed, just short character. Like, I don't know. That's what really sticks out to me. She seems very short, whereas Ninatsuki seems more lithe in her appearance to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think she actually has pink hair, but that's because I think people have in reference to that.
Correct. Yeah, she does.
You know. So I know she has pink hair. But and sorry, now I'm just thinking back to when you finally find out about her parents and that whole thing.
Oh,
I don't know why my mind went there, but yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty to know about her that's completely independent from how she looks.
And let me just say, actually, to go back to the description thing, fortunately, that show was very well narrated. Unfortunately, in certain places, that show was very well narrated. So you're fully aware that she's literally there, starving and eating a fucking tatami mat because she's locked in a cage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting because most of that visually is very, very dark. Like there's low lighting. So it's kind of interesting that you probably get more from the descriptions than you actually would from the visuals in that particular case.
It's like, great.
The idea that she has to wet herself in the cage, things like that. I think your image of that is more intense than the actual deal, which is crazy.
And then I just have to say this. So I recently watched a Everything Wrong with Future Diary thing. And this guy, he spends an hour and a half, and I'm like, couple of points, and yeah, I'm taking this chance to actually rebuttal a few of the things he said. He mentions that when Aru finds out that he was created directly by Deus, he goes, but he's God. Wasn't everyone created by God? Well, genius, actually, no. What he meant was he was directly created by him, not that he was conceived by two people, meaning in the modern day, which is when that show takes place, people aren't directly created by deities anymore. That is what he was alluding to. 1. 2, you mentioned Yuno's psychological state because, she glommed onto him because he was not awkward. Actually, he he did not have to say we can get married when we're older, but he did. And let's look at the life that she had dealt with up to that point. And by the way, I'm an adoptee. I was adopted. So you can obviously imagine, just think about that. And I feel like people give that, like this guy spent like I said, an hour and a half. And there were things that he just completely and utterly missed. Like the parallels between Yuno's fixation on Yuki and Yuki's fixation on his parents and wanting a relationship with them. Even down to the fact that the one thing Yuki wanted to do was watch the stars. The one thing Yuno wanted to do was watch the stars. In fact, in Redial, she says, remember the promise we made like forever ago? Come on, let's go watch the stars. There was so many, and even when you look at Seventh and the couple, Marco and his woman, Marco flips out on Yuki because he's like, you let your woman do all the work for you? If there's a bullet, if there's a knife, you take it because that's your responsibility. And he proved that when his woman was in that cave in, and she said, she's like, go. And he's like, you should have, and he says, you should have known the instant this happened, leaving wasn't an option, and they died together. And it's just, I loved all of the surrounding commentary. Ninth coming to the realization, you're just a kid crying for daddy and mommy and daddy to get up, which is really interesting because if you remember when they exhumed her parents from the cage, says, you woke them up. There's so much depth to that show, and it just pisses me off because I feel like all this guy sees is, crazy yandere killing people. But there's so much more to it than that. And I kind of feel like it's typical American criticism. Like, that's just kind of my thought on that. And, I know a lot of people don't like it, and they're probably going to think that I'm crazy for defending it this vehemently, but I felt there was a lot there. And I felt like, like there was definitely a lot there.
Yeah.
And
I think most people, it's a bit divisive because I've definitely seen criticism of the show on both sides, but there's a lot of people who really like it. So I wouldn't say you're alone in that regard by any means.
It just, I don't know. It's just, I felt like, because I think I was looking to see if you did something, you and Mother's Basement. I was looking to see if you guys had done something on it. I sort of wasn't thinking that you did because I got the feeling that you stuck exclusively to Fate stuff.
Not entirely, but no, I have not covered Future Diary at any point.
Which now I actually kind of want you to. Which by the way, I am contemplating creating a channel. Actually, I'm contemplating going under the alias of Weasu, which is so I'm Lakota. That's what we call ourselves, but we're commonly known as the Sioux people. So Weasu, a combination of course, Weeaboo and Sioux. And then I'm thinking of having a segment called Anime in the Dark.
Oh.
Which is going to just be me critiquing anime both as a blind anime fan and as an anime fan in general.
I think that's wonderful.
And so that's something I'm really contemplating doing. If anyone has any recommendations, that'd be awesome. But rant of Future Diary aside, or in defense of Future Diary, guys, let's look beneath the freaking surface because I don't see anyone criticizing my hero or Boku no Hero because Toga's completely out of her goddamn mind. Just saying.
Yeah.
But
one interesting question. Okay, so in Future Diary, there's that part where Yuno kidnaps him and like ties him to a chair.
Yeah.
You remember that scene? Okay, yeah. And she's like trying to keep him away from what would be his new friends, I think was the idea.
Yes, because that was actually when they had first come in. He started going off with them. Tsubaki gets into the picture. I'm surprised about. Oh, well, she didn't end up living in the end because, well, yeah. But yeah. So, what's your question?
I was just curious because I'm wondering if they conveyed it at any point. But she's literally, for the majority of that time when she has him captive, she's just completely in her underwear. I was wondering if that's something they ever conveyed at all.
I think they mentioned something to that effect. Like when she's in the bunny suit, they actually mentioned that.
Yeah, she's just literally, she looks like extra crazy because she's just running around in her underwear for that whole section.
Right. I'd have to go back and watch it again, which I may just take this as an excuse to watch the entire series again. But yeah, I also like something that's interesting is again the amount of narration that was there. The primary fan service thing with that was the bathing suit scene, and what else was there? I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because I'm thinking of when I forget who she was threatening because she threatened oh so many people, and she goes, she says, she she's a whore. She's trying to take you from me. The least she deserves is a knife to the jugular. And she says it like it's just this, like, she says it in the same way that you would say, oh, the least I can do is get you a pop. And
yep, the subtext in there is insane. Like,
she just, the fact that she conceptualized, the least she deserves is a knife to the jugular. And I just busted out laughing at that point. But, I kind of joking. Oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
I kind of jokingly told a friend of mine. I said, I don't know if it's healthy that a lot of my favorite female characters are, you know, these yandere-esque characters, and my friend, who's also my ex, goes, "Well, you have a type."
Yeah. Yep, there's a little bit of something for everybody. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, obviously this is fictional. It's fun because it's the idea of something more than it is the actual execution of it. Like, I would find it very hard to probably, stick in a relationship with someone like that.
Well, I mean, me. A really good example, in anime, you get Yuno. In real life, you get Fatal Attractions / Misery.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I actually think those are really good examples. Like, the one is, you know, so far from reality that you're like, wow, this is interesting. But then the other one, you see how that would probably actually play out, and you're like, this is fucking terrifying, legitimately.
That's kind of how School Days, I don't know if you've heard of that one. I don't know if it ever got dubbed.
I've been meaning to actually watch that.
It's not the best show, but it's remarkable for its bad ending, I guess, is what it is. And what makes it kind of stand out is that, you know, there's usually those harem shows where some stud guy bangs a bunch of chicks and they all love him and stuff like that. And he doesn't necessarily have to make up his mind on any particular person. Whereas School Days shows how wrong that can be and the negative consequences thereof. And it just goes all to shit by the end because he can't commit to a single girl and be faithful.
Oh, God, that's actually... Wow.
It almost takes it down the opposite direction where it's like almost exaggeratingly real in that regard. Maybe. I might actually check that out. Hey, did you ever watch Hikaru no Go? No, I have not, but I've heard of it.
It's funny. I came across that on a fan fiction site, so I started reading fan fiction for it before I actually watched it. So that was actually extremely interesting to kind of do things in the opposite way. What do you think of, do you find that poppy shows, DBZ, Bleach, Naruto, don't have as much depth as shows that you or I might actually watch?
I mean, shonen is one thing. There's a lot of tropes going for it, but any of those shows that go on for seasons and seasons and seasons, it's really hard for them, I think, to have a more compelling narrative because of like stakes, like having permanent change in characters and moving on, and everything takes so long to develop. Whereas, you can have a really compelling show in just like one season. That
Right. And then do you prefer uh things like Mirai Nikki or Dead Man or something like that, where it's maybe 40 episodes, but and things move along at a clip, and it doesn't take 20 fucking episodes for one punch to be thrown. You know, I definitely think that, like, I actually thought that I was weird because I'm sort of preferring the smaller, condensed yet dense shows like that.
No, they're definitely what I prefer as well.
Because, like, I mean, there's a lot of depth to, like, Naruto or Berserk from, okay, when I say Berserk, I'm specifically referring to the manga. I am not referring to that horrendous adaptation. But
well, that's
anyway.
interesting to me. Like, how does it come off to you as a horrendous adaptation? Because a lot of people are complaining about the CG and the visuals just being so ugly.
Just, for one, there's a really distinct scene where Guts is standing and they go, they don't have swords for... Like, there was a very distinct, ultra American sounding voice actor that just... The scene was like, yeah, Guts, that sword's too big for you, because they were training or something, and I just felt kind of like, while I think it was less dramatic than the reading of it, which was good, but I think it sort of swung the other way. But no, Berserk is a good example. It goes on for quite a while, but it's like they definitely, I feel, it still tells a good story. It will have an end, hopefully, and that's the thing. I think things need to end.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's what it boils down to. Things need to end, and I think in the case of like DBZ, Naruto, and don't do the freaking second generation bullshit, because it doesn't work. I mean, Star Wars did it, but they didn't have, and well, we see how well that didn't play out.
That's
and that's the thing. Like, if you're going to do second generation, like, do Old Republic, New Republic, totally different people, thousands of year difference, But you've got Naruto, you got Naruto Shippuden, and then it is a bunch of callbacks to the originals, and like, you're never gonna get the same thing. Metal Lee, Rock Lee's son, who he has anxiety, and so he can't be around crowds. That's a far fucking cry from his dad, who could not use quintessential abilities and had to overcome what amounts to a crippling disability in the ninja world, and got to a point where he took on a almost fully transformed tailed beast. Bit of a downgrade, But that's just me.
Gotcha. So yeah, interesting. Like with Berserk, I'm assuming you're meaning like the more recent adaptation, because it had an anime before, but
yeah, the most recent one.
Yeah, apparently that one is pretty good. But
who's that? It's me. Oh, how? I'm actually doing an interview currently. That's all. Right, I'm back.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's see here. I've only got a couple questions left. We've covered a lot, so let's see here. Who are your favorite voice actors?
I don't know them by name, sadly.
That's fine. You can do it by character.
Kurama, Hiei, Shiro, Ganta, and I'll go by because they encapsulate those characters so well. Shiro sounds like what she is. An emotionally and mentally stunted person who's about, maybe 7 or so in her mind. That's Shiro in a nutshell. Ganta sounds like what he is, a 14-year-old who's trying to deal with a really fucked up situation, but he sounds like he wants to cry because again, look at the situation he's in. I'm in the middle of an interview. But you know, that's the whole thing. Like they, all of those voice actors, they encapsulate the character. That's what sells me on a voice actor, is the ability to encapsulate who and what that character is.
Mm.
You know,
yeah, no, that's wonderful.
If they're a snarky, cynical asshole, then be a snarky, cynical asshole. Chie. But continue.
Yeah. Okay, so about music, are there certain songs that stand out to you? Like scores, OSTs, that kind of stuff?
OPs. Did I mention OPs? The Yu Yu Hakusho OP, fucking iconic.
The original one, like the first one. I don't know how many they had more than one, but
Dead Man Wonderland OP is actually my ringtone. I like English openings. That is the one thing I'll actually say. I do like English openings. So OPs are really important for me. I don't know specific pieces, but like certain music, again, going back to Mirai Nikki. Sorry that I keep using that as a default, but it's really helpful. The music is very unique to it. Even when I when I watched that one woman rapping as the music even there was it gave a very Mirai Nikki vibe to it, you know. Oh, one other little fun fact I'd like to just mention, in Redial, when she reappears and breaks into his dimension, she sounds older and a lot more mentally put together.
Uh-huh.
So she came through a lot, and you can kind of tell.
Gotcha. Let's see here. One, I guess a more interesting question would be, kind of in the same vein as figures and being able to understand how a character is. Do you think somebody who cosplayed as a character would be a way for you to kind of understand how that character might be if you were to feel like fabrics, things like that?
I don't know. I would like to mention, though, that I actually would find cosplaying really interesting, except my image of what cosplaying was a bit different. See, I thought cosplay was like LARPing, where you cosplayed the character and you were in the role of the character. Like, I think that'd be really interesting if they had like a cosplay event where you would cosplay characters and you stayed in character. So in cosplay, you got to have a moment like Yuki running into Hiei, or Vegeta running into Toga, or, you know, Bulma trying to stand too close to Yuki and, you know, flipping her shit, you know.
Mm. Yeah,
Things
I mean,
like that.
that's an aspect sometimes of the cosplay for sure. There have been people who do like skits, and I think some of the most impressive cosplay, like, yeah, they really nail the personality, even if it's just like a pose or something. But or the place that they go to looks like it's just right out of the show, like the spectacular lighting and things. Even if they probably had to Photoshop sometimes to make it that way. But yeah, no. All right, yeah. I think that more or less answers it. Let's see here. Two more, I guess, kind of just like overarching questions. Do you have any advice to give for other blind fans who might be interested in anime?
I would say let yourself just watch the show and don't fixate on trying to catch every little thing, because then watching anime is going to become a stressful experience, and that's something I'm trying to learn. I would also say stick to your interest, stick to your taste. Don't just watch something because it has narration. If you don't like it, you don't like it. You have the ability not to like something. Sword Art Online comes to mind. You know, and if you're with someone who's willing to help you by describing things, take the opportunity. You as a blind anime fan have just as much right to enjoy this world and this culture, or this aspect of nerd culture that as any sighted person would. So it's as simple and concise as that.
Yeah, and for the industry, for the people making these shows or comics and books or any of that stuff, what things can they focus on if they are intrigued on making their work accessible
Let,
to as many
let
people
me
as
just
possible? Yeah.
let me just say, just remember us. We are out here. We as blind anime fans, we exist. I mean, I guarantee if a mangaka remembered us, I mean, it would be incredible. Everybody talks about we're in this time of diversity and all this stuff, but yet I still can't watch a vast majority of anime and I can't read manga. And that may seem like a small thing, but when you consider that, anime and literature and stuff, these were coping mechanisms in my life, that means a lot to me, and it would be amazing to be able to enjoy these things now. And that's what it is. Pay attention to narration, add distinct sounds, consistent distinct sounds. Would light novels make audio versions of them? With manga, make audio descriptive versions of them? That's what I would say, because we are here. We again, we are here. We are here, and again, we are here. It simply boils down to that point. Blind anime fans exist, and we may not be a large demographic, but we're still a demographic, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, okay. So, kind of along with that, like, for instance, if you were somebody who wrote light novels, if you released your light novel in kind of a digital format where you could just kind of copy and paste the text, would that be more accessible because it would allow you to just literally have the text to speech read the story to
Yeah, I
you?
mean, that would be extremely accessible. That would be good. Or in a format that I could just open it up and then read it, because I read a lot of fan fiction, like how
Hmm.
AO3 does stuff. If you have any idea what AO3 is,
I don't think I do.
it's called Archive of Our Own. It's a fan fiction platform.
Oh, okay. No, I do. I've heard of that.
So yeah, it's like stuff like that, like AO3 and such. But I mean, again, you just a lot of it's common sense, and that's the thing. A lot of it is freaking common sense. I mean, Yu Yu Hakusho managed to make it a fairly accessible anime without even trying, or maybe they did try. I don't know. But I mean, it's awesome. Oh, and if you would, after we're done here, could you send me the title of the racing anime that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, Initial D. Absolutely.
Oh, and also, please, please, please make sites accessible to screen readers. I can't use Crunchyroll, for instance.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, how does
please,
that
please,
work
please.
actually, the screen reader?
Uh, so you read, if a button is labeled, it'll read what it is. And
Okay,
a
do
lot
you
of
kind of have
things,
to like search around the screen to find a button?
I can flick through my phone. I can flick my finger, or I can touch a part of the screen, and it might say Tokyo Ghoul Episode 1 English Dub. And so I double tap on that, and then it starts playing. And then I can flip around that screen and rewind and fast forward and do all those things.
Yeah, so in that case, it's just a matter of programming it or being so it's compatible with that software.
Exactly. And most blind people are iPhone users.
Hmm.
Yes, most blind people are iPhone users.
Because the iPhone has
Um,
good accessibility options.
yes, which is actually hilarious, because when they originally produced the iPhone, they said we didn't make it for blind people, but the National Federation of the Blind and various other blind people protested it, and now they have the single most accessible piece of equipment out there.
That's awesome.
So it's actually absolutely hilarious. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that would be awesome to be able to do that, because I mean, uh, there's a whole world of anime out there, um, you know, and it's awesome in my opinion.
Okay, do you have
Like
anything else you'd like to add?
I would just like to say again, we as blind anime fans are here. I'd like to say to anime fans as a whole, stand by your guns. Um, stand by your convictions. We've been in this, well, some of us have been in this fandom in some form or fashion for over half of our lives. And we should not let a bunch of interlopers basically tell us what our fandom and our fandoms should be. Let's see. To all my Naruto fans, soccer is still useless. Joking. But, and if I may give an endorsement, my anime endorsement is Darwin's Game. That's the big one. And for all of my future diary haters out there, kindly, I hope that my presentation of things helped you alter your opinion and thinking that it's not just a gore fest. And I'd like to thank you for having me. I'd like to thank you for answering me and not just, saying, oh, great, some random dude, and blowing me off. I'm really thankful for this opportunity to be able to speak as an anime fan and as a fan of yours, because I am. This is kind of surreal, actually, to be having this conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you so much for agreeing to do so. I think it's a fantastic perspective and another way for pretty much anybody to really think about, like, well, here's another dimension to a show that maybe you've taken for granted, or now you can have a better appreciation for. Like, I've never thought of doing it, but just like, maybe closing my eyes and just kind of listening to how well the audio is mixed, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's that. There's like one of the really distinct memories is Seven Deadly Sins. They're in a bar and this person's in armor, like a really heavy suit of armor. And nobody told me they're in a really heavy suit of armor, but you can tell because you can hear the armor scraping across the floor and you can hear them muffled because their visor is down.
That's awesome. Yeah, not everyone kind of does that, and especially the idea of iconic sounds. So sounds that you associate with a very specific thing, as opposed to just like, I don't know, a generic sword slash or something. It's like this particular audio cue is kind of interesting.
Or like the burst of sound when they power. I mean, I'm going to go back to DBZ, even though the burst of sound when they power up, or the sound of like a sweat drop.
Oh, yeah, even the comic sounds, yeah.
Or just stuff like that. You can infer a lot because the human brain is 2/3 of the human brain is wired for sound. We are actually primarily an auditory species, but because of the way the human body is structured, you guys get 80% of your information visually. So that's how that goes. And may I ask why the name OtakuDaiKun?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I had different ideas for what I wanted to call the channel. Dai itself was kind of a nickname I was doing in like high school or something. But as far as just, I mean, otaku just, it's an interesting thing because some people in Japan, otaku is generally considered a bad thing. It's like you're too obsessive, you're like almost degenerate. And in the West, it's sort of like, oh, cool, anime fan and stuff without that same stigma. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe sitting somewhere in between. I'd feel like just kind of owning the fact and being like, okay, it is what it is.
it's just like weeb. We were called weebs as an insult. Non-anime fans called us weeaboos. And now we use the term weeb for ourselves. And I think it's the same sort of thing. Of course, otaku meaning, and I know it, Dai being your nickname, and kun, of course, being the honorific.
Yes.
So, okay, I actually understand that now. And in your opinion, do you speak Japanese?
No, I've picked up a lot, and sometimes I can just kind of intuitively understand what I'm hearing, but being able to like rationalize it is kind of hard. Like write it down on paper or something. It's like after a while, it's like I hear a character say something, and I'm like, oh, I know what they said without actually having to look down.
Okay, and then would you say that using anime as a gateway into Japanese culture is a bad thing? I don't think it's a bad thing as long as they don't do with Japanese culture what some people do with my culture, which is they romanticize everything and stuff like that. I think if you go from one step to the other and you genuinely find a love for these people and you want, that's a different thing, I think. But, I think if you have strictly an anime-centric passion for Japan, then I don't think you should say you have an interest in Japanese culture. Just say you're an anime fan and leave it at that, out of respect for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to take it with a grain of salt. I think a lot of people will get into Japanese culture from it, but at a certain point they realize, oh, well, this is obviously it's insanely pop culture, the kind of dramas and things that people think about there. Like obviously anime, when you go to Japan, it's everywhere. They use it for advertisements and all sorts of things. But if you were to go to like, say the countryside or something, the values and stuff, people, that's a very city-like. I guess maybe like if you're into anime, you might get like a very specific geeky city-like understanding of that culture, which is only a tiny bit. And it can be a gateway. I know, for instance, like Hatsune Miku, for instance, I didn't realize this before, but they actually used her in the hologram concerts and such to promote traditional kabuki theater, which is amazing. So she was a character in an actual production, which would allow people who have interest in Miku to learn about the art of kabuki, which is crazy. Goes back many, very far.
Oh, wow. That's actually awesome. That is definitely awesome.
Yeah, so like things like, I guess in kabuki, typically it would be men who play all characters, even women, with masks, and they would kind of falsetto their voice, things like that. But in this case, they put Miku in for that particular character, and everyone would act around him. So even in Japan, I think that's a way to reteach Japan, some of their own cultures, and that's actually, that's very much a point, because in Japan, it's very mixed. You'll be walking down the street of the city, and a little tiny cutaway for a miniature shrine will be there. So it's like you get little hints and pieces of what once was.
It's just like any people who are still a people, but Western civilization has encroached upon who they are. And I'm sorry, but that is kind of how I see it. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you on an iPhone, on Skype, about anime, but I can go upstairs and start talking to my grandmother in our language, which is 75,000 years old.
Yep.
But I'm actually, my relative has been sitting here trying to tell me that there's food, so I'm going to actually go and eat something finally.
Absolutely. I think I've covered everything, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. And Lila Wopila Tanka, Wopila Chicha, that means, it's really hard to explain in English. It's like very much great thank you, and I tell you thank you.
That's fine. Sometimes you just have to accept it at face value.
Yeah, it's like very big thank you, I tell you thank you.
Nice. All right, well, enjoy your meal, and look forward to this video.
Have a blessed day. Doksha.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.